There are more than 1,000 watch brands operating in the world today. Most people know 5 of them. Some people know 10. The collector community knows maybe 50. And almost nobody outside the industry has a clear picture of how they all relate to each other. Which ones are actually making what they claim to make? Which ones are sharing factories with brands at completely different price points? And which ones are genuinely worth whatever number is printed on the tag? This video is the map. We are going to go from the absolute bottom of the market to the unreachable top, explain exactly what each level is doing, name the brands that define each tier, and tell you the truth about what you are actually buying at every price point. By the end of this, you will never walk into a watch boutique the same way again. Before we start, one thing you need to understand about how this industry is structured. The watch market is not a smooth continuum from cheap to expensive. It is a series of distinct tiers, each with its own manufacturing logic, its own marketing vocabulary, and its own version of what the price premium is actually purchasing. The tier system exists because the industry needs you to believe that moving up is always meaningful. Sometimes it is, often it is not. The distance between what a watch costs to make and what it costs to buy expands dramatically as you climb the pyramid. And the reasons for that expansion are not always what the brand wants you to think they are. Keep that in mind at every level we cover. The tool watches. At the very base of the pyramid sits the category the industry calls mass market, and serious collectors call honest. These are watches that do not pretend to be anything other than what they are. Casio is the defining name at this level. Founded in Japan in 1946, Casio began making watches in 1974 and has since produced some of the most technically competent, inexpensive timepieces ever manufactured. The F91W, a plastic digital watch that retails for under $15, has been in continuous production since 1991. Its quartz movement keeps time to within approximately 30 seconds per month. The G-Shock, launched in 1983 to survive a 3-meter drop onto concrete with 100 meters of water resistance, is worn by military units and technical divers who cannot afford to have their instrument fail. The Casio Duro, as discussed in other videos on this channel, is the watch on Bill Gates' wrist. Casio's radio-controlled models synchronize automatically with atomic clock signals and keep time to within 1 second per 100,000 years. None of this costs more than $150. Timex, the American brand founded in 1854, operates at the same level with slightly more fashion-conscious positioning. Their Expedition and Weekender lines are functional, durable, and completely honest about what they are. Swatch, the Swiss brand created in 1983 specifically to save the Swiss watch industry from Japanese quartz competition, operates here with plastic-cased watches that retail from $50 to $150, Swiss-made by the standards of the law, honest about the cost of what they are selling. Invicta sits at this level in price, but not always in honesty. They sell automatic movement watches at prices that appear to offer extraordinary value, but their quality control is inconsistent. Their brand positioning is aspirational without justification, and their marketing often implies a heritage and prestige that the product does not support. At Tier 1, Casio is the benchmark. Everything else in the category is measured against it. The Enthusiast entry point. This is where the watch community's most passionate arguments begin, because this tier contains brands that deliver genuine mechanical credibility at prices almost anyone can access. Seiko is the most important brand in this conversation, and possibly the most underrated name in global watchmaking. Founded in Tokyo in 1881, Seiko has produced virtually every significant Japanese horological innovation of the last century. They created the world's first quartz watch, the Astron, in 1969, which triggered the quartz crisis that nearly destroyed Swiss watchmaking. They created the spring drive, a hybrid movement that uses a mechanical mainspring regulated by a quartz oscillator to achieve accuracy of 1 second per day, which puts it ahead of most Swiss mechanical watches at any price. The Seiko 5. Their entry automatic line retails between $150 and $400 and contains a movement that Seiko designs, manufactures, and assembles entirely in-house. That is vertical integration that brands charging 10 times the price cannot honestly claim. Orient, a subsidiary of Seiko, offers in-house automatic movements at the $200 range, specifically the caliber F6922 and F6724, movements of genuine mechanical quality that compete with Swiss offerings at 3 to 4 times the price. Citizen sits alongside Seiko with its eco-drive technology, solar-powered quartz that never needs a battery change in cases that often cost under $300. At this tier, the value-to-quality ratio reaches its highest point in the entire watch market. The collector community has known this for decades. The marketing community has done its best to keep you from finding out. The Swiss entry point. Here is where Switzerland enters the conversation, and here is where the first marketing premium begins to separate from the manufacturing reality. Tissot, owned by the Swatch Group, has been making watches in Le Locle since 1853. Their T-Classic and PRX lines retail from $400 to $1,200 with Swiss-made certification and movements sourced from ETA or Swatch Group's in-house suppliers. They are competent, well-finished, and honestly priced for their tier. The T-Touch, their solar-powered tactile watch, is a genuine technical achievement. Hamilton, an American brand founded in Lancaster, Pennsylvania in 1892, is now owned by the Swatch Group and manufactured in Switzerland, a transition that changed the brand's geographic reality while maintaining its design vocabulary. Their Khaki and Jazzmaster lines sit between $500 and $1,500 and use movements that are Swiss by origin and legitimate by standard. Their in-house H10 movement delivers 80 hours of power reserve, which is more than most mechanical watches at this price. Mito and Certina operate at the same level within the Swatch Group structure, both offering Swiss-made quality at prices that represent the lower boundary of the Swiss category without overstating what is inside. Longines, also Swatch Group, sits at the top of this tier and deserves specific mention. Founded in Saint-Imier in 1832, Longines has a documented history of precision timekeeping that predates most of the aspirational brands, charging 3 times its retail price. Their Master Collection and Spirit lines at $1,000 to $2,000 offer legitimate Swiss manufacture history, beautiful cases, and movements that perform beyond their price. They do not carry the social signal of Rolex. They carry considerably more watchmaking history than most brands that do. The premium accessible. This is the tier where the marketing budget begins to noticeably exceed the manufacturing investment, and where knowing exactly what you are buying matters most. Tag Heuer, owned by LVMH, has been making chronographs in Le Chaux de Fonds since 1860. Their Formula One and Carrera lines are associated with motorsport sponsorship, celebrity ambassadors, and a retail price of $2,000 to $5,000. The movements inside Tag Heuer watches have historically been sourced externally, though the brand has developed more in-house production in recent years with calibers like the Heuer 02. You are paying partly for the watch and substantially for the Motorsport Association. Breitling, headquartered in Grinchen, has built an identity around aviation and was for decades the brand of professional pilots. Their Navi timer, introduced in 1952, was a genuine tool watch used for airborne navigation. Today, Breitling sits at $2,000 to $8,000 with mostly in-house movements following their acquisition by investment firm CVC Capital Partners in 2017. The aviation heritage is real. The premium over what the movement justifies is also real. Oris, the independent Swiss brand based in Holstein, is the most honest brand in this tier and possibly in the entire pyramid. They have no outside ownership. They source movements externally and say so. They price honestly. Their Aquis diver at $1,500 and their big crown pointer date at $2,000 represent the best transparency to quality ratio at their price point in Swiss watchmaking. Tudor is Rolex's sister brand. sharing some components and manufacturing infrastructure while positioning at approximately 40% of Rolex's retail price. The Black Bay series at $2,000 to $4,000 is a legitimate alternative to far more expensive dive watches and carries real Rolex DNA without the waitlist theater. The Aspirational Biaso. This is the tier where the social signal becomes the primary product for most buyers, and where the brands that actually justify the price are surrounded by brands that do not. Omega is the most important name here and the most complex. Founded in 1848 in Le Chaux de Fonds, Omega is the official timekeeper of the Olympics, the watch worn on the moon during Apollo 11 in 1969, and the brand that has held the James Bond licensing agreement for 3 decades. Their Speedmaster Moonwatch, referencing the caliber 321 worn by Neil Armstrong, retails from $5,000 to $9,000. Their Master Chronometer certification, developed with the Swiss Federal Institute of Metrology, tests movements in 8 positions at 2 different temperatures and under a 15,000 Gauss magnetic field. It is a genuinely rigorous standard. They are owned by the Swatch Group, which means their supply chain and manufacturing infrastructure overlaps with Tissot, Longines, and Mido, a fact their marketing does not feature prominently. IWC, based in Schaffhausen, has been producing complex watches since 1868 and is owned by Richemont. Their Portuguese and Pilot's watch, lines at $6,000 to $15,000, represent legitimate Swiss prestige with a documented history of movement development. Panerai, the Italian-designed, Swiss-manufactured brand now owned by Richemont, built its identity around watches made for the Italian Navy commandos in the mid-20th century. Their 44mm cases and cushion-shaped lugs are immediately recognizable. The movements inside are sourced primarily from Richemont's internal manufacturing infrastructure. You are paying for the aesthetic and the military history, both of which are real. Cartier, founded in Paris in 1847, is in a separate category from every other brand in this tier because it is the only name here that is genuinely also a jewelry house. The Tank, designed in 1917, and the Santos, designed in 1904, are not competing with dive watches. They are objects from an entirely different tradition, and their pricing at $5,000 to $15,000 reflects a luxury goods heritage that has nothing to do with tool watch functionality. The Prestige. Rolex is the most famous watch brand on Earth and the only name at this price level that most people outside the watch community have heard of. Founded in London in 1905 by Hans Wilsdorf, now headquartered in Geneva, Rolex manufactures approximately 1 million watches per year. They make their own cases, bracelets, dials, movements, and even refine their own gold alloys in a proprietary foundry. Their Submariner at $10,000, their GMT Master 2 at $12,000, and their Daytona at $15,000 are built to tolerances that justify a portion of the premium. The other portion is the most successful luxury brand management operation in watchmaking history. The waitlist, the authorized dealer system, the allocation structure that forces buyers to spend on jewelry and less desirable models before being offered the watch they actually want, these are not quality control mechanisms. They are market capture mechanisms. The watch is excellent. The theater around it is engineered. Blancpain, founded in Villeray in 1735, claims to be the oldest watch brand in continuous existence. Their 50 Fathoms is the original modern diving watch, preceding the Rolex Submariner and establishing specifications that the entire dive watch category adopted. At $10,000 to $30,000, they are a legitimate prestige purchase for buyers who know the history. Zenith, based in Le Locle, built one of the most celebrated movements in mechanical watchmaking. The El Primero chronograph caliber, launched in 1969, a high-frequency movement whose architecture is studied in watchmaking schools. Tag Heuer used a modified El Primero in early Carrera chronographs. It is one of the few movements at any price whose technical achievement is unambiguous. The Holy Trinity. These 3 brands are what the industry calls the Holy Trinity. The phrase is used so frequently it has become a cliché. It is also accurate. Audemar's Piguet, founded in Le Brassus in 1875, created the Royal Oak in 1972. Designed by Gerald Genta, the first luxury sports watch in stainless steel at a price that shocked the market at launch and now defines an entire aesthetic language. The Royal Oak offshore, the Millenary, the concept watches, all of them are produced at the Vallée de Joux manufacturer in runs small enough that the secondary market consistently exceeds retail. They remain independent, family-held, and fiercely protective of their production integrity. Vacheron Constantin, founded in Geneva in 1755, is the oldest watch manufacturer in continuous operation in the world. Over 270 years without a single year of interrupted production. Their complications, their dials, their movement finishing are produced in Geneva at standards that a very small number of watchmakers anywhere on Earth can match. Their overseas and traditional lines at $20,000 to $50,000 represent value in the context of what is actually being made. Their grand complications at hundreds of thousands represent a category that has almost no relationship with ordinary market logic. Patek Philippe, founded in Geneva in 1839, is the reference point against which every other watchmaker is measured. They have never been acquired by a group. They are family-owned and intend to remain so. Their guarantee to service every watch they have ever produced, back to 1839, is backed by a parts archive no other brand maintains. Their movements are finished by hand. Their grand complications represent decades of engineering development. The Grandmaster chime reference 6300A in stainless steel, sold at the only watch charity auction in 2019 for $31,200,000. It is the most expensive watch ever sold at auction. It is not show and not a marketing exercise. It is the most technically complex wristwatch ever produced by the company that has been making complex wristwatches longer than anyone else alive. The independents. Above and alongside the Holy Trinity, operating by entirely different rules, are the independent manufacturers. These are brands that do not belong to Swatch Group, Richemont, or LVMH. They are answerable to no quarterly earnings report. They make what they choose to make, in quantities they choose to make it, at prices they set based on what it costs them to produce. F.P. Journe, founded by watchmaker Francois-Paul Journe in Geneva in 1999, produces fewer than 1,000 watches per year. His movements are made entirely in-house, in rose gold, at a standard of finishing that the major groups cannot match at any price, because the major groups cannot justify the labor cost of what Journe's atelier does by hand. His chronomètre bleu, his tourbillon souverain, his sonnerie souveraine are studied by watchmakers the way musicians study Bach. They are not investments in the financial sense. They are investments in the idea that some things should be made perfectly regardless of whether the market requires it. A. Lange and Söhne, founded in Glashütte, Germany in 1845, destroyed by Soviet expropriation after World War II and refounded in 1990 after German reunification, is the argument that there is watchmaking outside Switzerland that equals or surpasses it. Their outsized date, their double-split chronograph, their Zeitwerk decimal strike are achievements in movement architecture that no Swiss brand has replicated. They are owned by Richemont but operate with a degree of independence that their manufacturing quality reflects. Richard Mille, founded in 2001, is the newest major name in high watchmaking and the most controversial. Their watches retail from $50,000 to several $1,000,000. They use materials from aerospace and motorsport, grade 5 titanium, carbon nanotubes, and TPT carbon. Their movements are skeletonized to a degree that makes the technical achievement visible. Their marketing is celebrities on tennis courts and Formula One paddocks. Whether what they charge is justified by what they produce is the argument the collector community has every day. Nomos, based in Glashütte, Germany, is the only brand in this tier that a person with a budget under $2,000 can access. And they belong here because their manufacturing transparency is more complete than any brand at any price. They tell you exactly what they make in-house, exactly what they source externally, and exactly why each choice was made. That honesty, in an industry built on selective disclosure, is its own kind of luxury. Here is the thing nobody will tell you when you walk into any boutique at any level of this pyramid. The tier you buy into does not determine whether you made a good purchase. The question is whether you understood what you were actually buying at the price you paid. At Tier 1, a Casio is the most accurate timekeeping instrument available to a consumer at any price. At Tier 2, a Seiko offers in-house mechanical watchmaking that many Tier 4 and Tier 5 brands cannot honestly match. At Tier 3, Longines carries more legitimate precision history than brands at twice its price. At the top of the pyramid, Patek Philippe charges what it charges because building what it builds genuinely costs that much. The brands that overcharge are the ones in the middle, the ones whose marketing budget dwarfs their manufacturing investment, the ones whose boutique rent is embedded in the price you pay for a movement they sourced from someone else and put their name on. The map exists. You are holding it. Stop letting the boutique tell you where to stand on it.